everyone, and welcome to Book Reviews by Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to be looking at a book that runs in a circle that I'm really familiar with, something that's very important to me and probably is important to a lot of you. And the book that we're looking at today is Inside American Education: The Decline, the Deception, the Dogmas by Thomas Sowell. Now I apologize for the little library sleeve here that I'm not supposed to remove, so I won't. It's from Interlibrary Loan. This book came to me all the way from Athens, Georgia, although I was surprised to find that library in Athens, Georgia had this, being so close to the University of Georgia. So it's written by Thomas Sowell. Again, Thomas Sowell is probably one of my favorite thinkers, writers, authors currently at this time. Now, one of the interesting things to note about this book is that it was written in 1992, but even though it was written in 1992, it's still very applicable today. Now, in this book, what Thomas Sowell is looking at is he's looking at the state of American education. Now, he looks at it both not only the high school level, really, but he also spends probably most of his time at the college and university level. That's the area that he's more familiar with. That's the area that he spent time teaching and looking into. And so that's where he's going to spend most of his time. But all of the conversation is going to revolve around what is going on in American schools. And I hope you got kind of your your big boy, your big girl underwear on, because he says a lot of pretty rough things about American education. And as a teacher, I wouldn't say that I took offense to it, but it certainly was something that made me think. He says a lot about some of our education courses that we are required to take as teachers. Things that I found to be relatively true when I was going through my undergraduate work, and even when I was going through my graduate work. So again, maybe not all the things that you're going to agree with, but certainly some arguments and some conversation that I would take into consideration if you were at all concerned about not only the state of American education, but moving forward with education in our country. Again, this applies to you not only if you're a teacher, but also if you're a parent with a student in schools, if you're a parent of a student going into college and university, because he talks a lot about what happens in colleges and university. I know is very true of my experience, the way that some professors behave and act. He talks about college expenditures and why college costs are going up so much, not just from the loans and things that are available to students, but also the way that colleges and universities will incur costs and then pass that cost on to parents and so forth and so on. He talks about some colleges as cartels in the way they collude together to set prices for tuition and things like that. So it really kind of gives you an inside track on what's happening in some of these places. So something that you should definitely pay attention to. Deals with some of the educational fads and things along those lines. And of course, as teachers, we see fads come and go. And he talks about one of the lines that he uses a lot, and he seems to kind of pick up on some lines in different books. But the particular line that he develops in this particular book is talking about the different educational approaches that are used, and the different statements that are made by educators. Is he says that facts are neither asked for nor given, and so I think that's kind of interesting and important, because a lot of times when statements are made about education by teachers, by professors, people in the public tend to take them at face value, which sometimes we should dig a little bit deeper. I know one of the big things recently has been this whole idea of data-driven methods or something along those lines. And from a personal experience, I was actually sitting in a meeting one time, and we were talking about a particular method that we were supposed to be using or approaching. And I raised my hand, I said, "Well, can you show me the data on this?" And they literally laughed at me, and just thought that I was being silly or humorous, as if who am I to question these types of methods that we're dealing with. So anyway, again, this is a book that I think that a lot of people should read so that they can take note and they can take whatever approaches are necessary, at least to start having the conversations, not only for teachers, administrators, professors, parents, students. If you're concerned at all about the education that your child is going to get, whether you're concerned about your own education, and some things that you can do in order to maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that exist within the educational system. So like I like to do, I'm going to read at least some excerpts from the book so you can get an idea of what the book is like, kind of the tenor of the book. And I'll say is I was very uncomfortable as I was reading through this, because it's pretty harsh, and so Not everything I was in 100% agreement on with him, but certainly caused me to stop and think, and certainly challenge some ideas. So anyway, here's a couple of excerpts. I'm going to read two to you. One's from the preface and one is from the conclusion. So the preface, it begins, "Like many other people, I've long been appalled by the low quality and continuing deterioration of American education. However, after doing the research for this book, I am frankly surprised that the results are not even worse than they are. The incredibly counterproductive fads, fashions, and dogmas of American education from kindergarten to the colleges have yet to take their full toll, in part because all the standards of earlier times have not been completely eroded away. But the inevitable retirement of an older generation of teachers and professors must leave the new trends and their accompanying newspeak as the dominant influence on the shaping of education in the generations to come." And again, written in 1992, but sounds almost like the exact same kind of conversations that we're having today. And one of the points that he brings up, he talks about the deterioration of American education. And one of the points that's brought up a lot is test scores and the declining test scores and things like that. And one of the stats that he brings up that I thought was pretty enlightening was the fact that actually our test scores are not lowering from the bottom, because a lot of times we talk about, well, we bring in a lot of these kids and we're trying to educate the whole society, and this has kind of been my argument. And when you try to educate absolutely everyone, and you test everyone, then of course the numbers maybe are going to be pulled down a little bit. But what he shows in the stats are that the people at the bottom actually are improving. But what's happening is the people at the very top, the students that used to be the very top students, their scores are actually declining. And so that's where some of the greatest concern is. And so I thought that was a pretty enlightening statistic that he used. And this is from the conclusion. It says, "All the ingredients for a successful educational system already exist in the United States. Some of the leading scholars in the world in numerous fields, masses of college-educated people capable of teaching in the public schools, and a public whose willingness to provide financial support for education has far outstripped educators' willingness to buckle down to the task of teaching academic skills to the next generation. The problems are fundamentally institutional. Changing those institutions is the key to changing behavior and attitudes too long insulated from accountability." So he takes note of a lot of the problems within the system, but he also says that if we want to make positive change in the education system, then the ingredients are already there. And so he outlines some of the things that he thinks, or at least some of the steps that he believes should be taken in order to improve the system. And again, a lot of that time is spent on kind of the college and then postgraduate schools. With kind of maybe a quarter dealing with elementary school and high school. So I thought it was a really interesting read. Again, if you're in the field of education, it might rub you the wrong way in a lot of ways, but certainly some ideas that you should at least take into consideration because I feel like a lot of the arguments that he makes are very valid. He has statistics and data once again to back up the points that he's making. Like he says in some of his previous books. Don't talk to me about your intentions, show me your results. And we talk a lot about intentions in education. A lot of times we're not able to show the results, and so if we can't show the results, then maybe we should be listening to some people who might have some different ideas than some of the approaches that we've taken in the past. So anyway, the book is Inside American Education: The Decline, the Deception, the Dogmas. I hope that you'll pick it up. I hope that you'll read it, consider some of the ideas, and if you do pick it up, I hope that you enjoy it. And as always, I hope to see you next time.